Well, show 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting, regular meeting, planning session, however you want to look at it, the Garfield Township Planning Commission to order. First item is a roll call.
Pledge.
Pledge.
Got the pledge.
Well, I was going in order. I apologize. I called meeting to order. Pledge allegiance. You're right. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's not the first time I've read call meeting to order and think it means roll call. So now we'll do a roll call.
Agostinelli.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
DeGood. Here. Fudge.
Here.
Racine.
Here.
Robertson.
Here.
McManus.
Here. Okay, well, now the first official item on the agenda is public comment, and I do not see any public tonight, so I don't think we'll go any further with that public comment at this point, and move on to review and approval of the agenda and any conflicts of interest.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Motion made and supported to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On your packet were the minutes from the February 14th regular meeting. Any corrections or questions or comments on the minutes?
Make a motion that we adopt the minutes.
Support.
Motion made and supported to adopt the minutes from the February 14th, 2024 meeting. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Correspondence, John?
Yeah,
Correspondence?
on your desk, you got three items. One is a email that we received from Jim Schmuckel regarding the master plan. We'll be talking about that later under the master plan agenda item. And then there's our two other items of some staff recommendations for some added language to the draft master plan that we'll also be speaking later on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. All right, reports. Molly, anything from the town board?
Not too much. We did approve that beer and wine license for Fairfield Inn, but John was able to explain that it's not really going to be advertised to the public, and that was one of our conditions. So they approved it that way. So that's it.
Was that the one that originally went to the one?
No.
It's a different one? Okay.
Yeah, that's for the new, what is it behind?
Well, there's the True Hotel, but this one's for the Fairfield, and if you recall, because the constraints placed on that site that we had a condition that there would be no outward-facing restaurants, so these are for their people that are staying at those hotels. Technically, that doesn't, you can't prevent somebody from going in and accessing that bar there based on the way the liquor license is, but so somebody could still go in there technically, but it's just something that we said that it can't be advertised as like a restaurant. Can't be separate, identified as a separate restaurant.
That's a Fairfield that's under construction, the new one?
Correct. Yep. Kind of behind McDonald's, right there,
Right.
the old Bill Marsh property.
Okay, thanks, Molly. Planning commissioners, Bob, ZBA, anything?
Yes, we did. We had a meeting, and we discussed on Southwest Silver Lake Road, a request to add a second story to a building on the water, that the existing building was encroaching into the side yard setback, and it was approved. It's like, there's about 2 foot of it is in the side yard setback. It's a long story, but back a number of years ago, the neighbor built their house, and they built it in the wrong location and ended up in court. And so they redivided the parcels up, and so the guy whose house was already there ended up with his side yard setback getting shrunk by 2 feet.
Not just.
So I guess gonna put a second story on it.
Okay. Parks and Rec, Chris, anything?
Haven't met since the last meeting.
John, joint planning?
No meeting since our last report.
All right. Staff reports.
All right, couple things. We always do our master plan announcement. There's no public here to receive that, but if anybody's watching the recording later, we did put the updated draft that we're going over tonight that you received at the last meeting. We did put that up on the website for people to comment on. Also, it was not the last board meeting, but the one before, with the public hearings for the text amendment and the zoning ordinance amendment that were passed that have now taken effect. A reminder to Planning Commission, if you want to bring in your books, or if you have them and want us to update them, we can provide the updated text and map. Or we can just give it to you, whatever's easiest for everybody involved. But yeah, it's probably easiest on our end. If people want to bring them in, we can just update your books right away. So
Okay.
that's all we had. Otherwise, we're going over the master plan tonight, so.
All right. All right, well, moving on to the next item is unfinished business, and it is a master plan update. So review the final draft and response to the watershed. So John, you want to take that?
Yeah, so hopefully you've had a little bit time to go through the master plan document, and I guess we don't have any real presentation to go through at this point. We're just kind of hoping to hear from comments that you might have regarding the plan. We did have a couple items that, like I mentioned on your desk, that we suggested adding, and I can cover those as well, but if you want, I can do those first and hear comments, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So there's two added, these are additions, so there's no changes or anything, no deletions or anything like that to any of the text. But the first one, is the one that has future land use. And then this is the chapter that starts on page 26, and this is the future land use designations and the descriptions that go with those designations. So we start off with agricultural and rural residential. Low-density residential is the next one. And this is what we wanted to do here, really pertains primarily to the area. I could see this being applied to two major areas where we've had some change in the future land use map. That's first is going to be the northwest part of the township, which historically has been designated as agricultural, and is now going to be designated as low-density residential. We realize that there may be some smaller agricultural operations there. We've had the one gentleman that came to the Planning Commission recently and spoke about his property and wanting to kind of continue, and it's not a very large agricultural operation. He's got some greenhouses and he grows flowers and that type of thing. So we wanted to recognize that these are areas of transition. While we don't expect them to be significant agricultural operations, we didn't want to necessarily preclude them from, forcing them out, so to speak. I mean, they provide some of that character that's still kind of a rural character, kind of agricultural character. So this is merely a description of that designation to recognize that some of these smaller scale agricultural operations would be allowed to continue. And it's not necessarily a zoning requirement or anything like that. It's not altering the zoning, but it allows us to evaluate if there could be some changes to the zoning ordinance map and how this designation actually applies. And the language that we have proposed in there is a sentence at the end that says, recognizing this designation may be in areas transitioning from agricultural uses to residential uses, small-scale agricultural operations in unplatted areas are allowed to continue. So it's just to know that you have a little bit of flexibility, particularly in these areas. It's still planned for low-density residential, but some of these smaller scale ones, so I'm thinking things less than 40 acres, 10, 20 acres maybe in size. This would also apply to the areas where we were kind of looking down on East Silver Lake Road and extending that down, and now have since added that in there on the future land use map. So this also does pertain to that, is just to know that this designation recognizes that while it is low-density residential, and that's the primary use, that there still may be some of these active agricultural uses in place.
So that's meant to maybe ease the minds of some people that didn't want it to change, but if that was never added, there would be no possible way that you're ever gonna stop anybody from doing agriculture on any of that land that is getting converted at any rate anyway, right? I mean, under what circumstance?
Well, when I was talking to the gentleman that has a small, he's got I think he's got 10 acres or whatever there, kind of up in the northwest part. Like if he really wanted to rezone that to agriculture, because I think.
But it isn't his
Wait.
agriculture? I mean, it's all gonna stay zoned to agriculture.
Right, I don't think his is, or what is it?
His is zoned R1.
Yeah, his
behind
is zoned
Great-
actually
Okay.
R1, so
Yeah.
if he wanted to rezone it to agriculture, we would be okay with that.
With this, okay.
With this
Well-
guidance giving flexibility to the planning commission to evaluate that.
I like the idea that you added that, but it probably will help somebody from complaining that didn't want it to convert over. But anyway, at any rate, there's no possible way that any agriculture properties that are zoned agriculture right now would ever,
No,
by changing this,
Right.
it's not gonna affect them anyway. So this is
Correct,
just
yes.
really to ease the
Right.
public's.
right. It's to recognize that we could still have some agriculture going on in these areas, so, because a little flexible. It's really about if you were evaluating primarily like zoning map changes, rezonings, and that type of thing.
Okay.
And this recognizes specifically like the unplatted areas. So some of these ones out here, even some of the ag zoned ones have the larger lot platted areas. But if there's something that's not platted, like this has not been scoped out for residential at that point yet. So it sort of just recognizes that.
So that would be in addition to what's already in the final draft. The other item is something we've been talking about in the office, relates back to the transportation and infrastructure goals. And there's specifically a goal related to streets and roads on page 62. And this would be, there's a 7.6 there, talks about access management. It says, continue access management requirements, which we have in our ordinance, including controlling access location, design, spacing, and operation, and coordinate their application with the Grand Traverse County Road Commission and the Michigan Department of Transportation. So those, whether it's some of our county roads or the state highway, is to work on the application of access management requirements and so forth. And then specifically, we've been interested in having some access management plans developed for both South Airport Road. We're calling it between, essentially from Cass Road to Town Line, because those are areas where we might have a greater proliferation of driveways on South Airport. When you get going from Cass to the west, there's really not that many. And then US 31 from basically Hartman going north to the Township City line. And all this is saying is that if we endeavor into any type of access management plans for these areas, that the master plan supports that. And by access management, it would be something that we would work with either MDOT or the Road Commission to help to identify where there might be some consolidation in driveways, that type of thing. Maybe there's some connections between parking areas and so forth. That would help us when we actually get a site plan in, and we're looking at, maybe there's an area, for instance, when we looked at when the Shell station, when it was redone there at the corner of Lafreniere and South Airport, we were really trying to work with the Road Commission and making sure that there was 2 driveways on South Airport, and now there's just 1. So trying to, work on those efforts. What really helps is if that were part of some type of a plan, and that we work in in concert with the Road Commission and MDOT. Potentially could have helped us deal with that one in case of like the Severn Brew that was over there, if we had some type of access management plan. Now, there's different levels of access management plans. Some of them actually will get down to the detail and will say, like, closing this driveway or combining this driveway. Now, how that actually is implemented it could be a bunch of different ways. It could be working through the site plan review process or whatever, but it gives us some guidance why there could be some changes there. And incidentally, when the Road Commission did their east-west study about connectivity going east and west through the urban area here, this was, I think, their number one recommendation. And it's usually one of those low-hanging fruit things that a lot of road agencies will use to help to deal with the flow of traffic, particularly like in this area of South Airport. If the driveways were condensed a little bit more, it focuses the turning movements onto those specific areas, and there's less likely for slow-down traffic where you got a lot more turning movements. So it's something that would help both the Road Commission and the township to work together on improving these areas. So we just wanted to call that out as a way to support, should there be more formal planning efforts. And I'm encouraged by the creation of the new TTCI Metropolitan Planning Organization as a great forum for having some good discussions related for the relationship between transportation and land use. So I think, we could probably get into having these discussions and ultimately maybe doing some planning on these areas.
John, you think the wording is, strong enough or whatever when we put in here desired? What if the contractor says no?
Well, the plan, so what it's just saying is that we would be supporting the development of an access management plan. And then there would actually have to be an access management plan that would, ideally, we would see an access management plan that would be adopted by, let's say, in this case, South Airport would be adopted by both the township and the Road Commission. And then that would be the policy guidance for making zoning decisions and so forth.
That'll work, thank you.
John, do you see any potential concern that by specifically calling out these two spots, that if we think of a third or a fourth spot, somebody would give us a hard time or could give us a hard time about that because it's not specifically listed? I'd hate to do that if
That's a good point. I was kind of looking at the other way from the standpoint, like narrowing it down, just so we're not talking about doing access management plans on every county road, but it would be a good point. Like, for instance, I could see maybe, somewhere over by the high school, for instance, or something like that, although I don't see a big issue there, but there could be some other location. So we could maybe eliminate the actual specific references and just say something to say access managements are desired for appropriate corridors or something like that.
or if you wanted to call these out, maybe somehow indicate among other areas or something or other, just so
Okay.
it doesn't, I'm not sure what the verbiage is, I haven't obviously thought this through, but we wouldn't want to tie our hands, I don't think.
To include.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something
okay.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we could say something, access management plans are desired for key corridor locations,
Including,
including the South Airport corridor and the US 31 corridor.
and perhaps others, or something like that.
There may,
Catch-all.
there may be others in the future that need to be addressed or reviewed,
Yeah, or they may be there in the present, we just haven't thought of them.
right,
Or others to be identified in the
in
future.
the future, yeah.
Yeah. Desired for including.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Well, while we're on that page, I had thought about, made a quick note, this is more of general ideas, except for maybe the Hartman Hammond specifically and a couple others, but it made me think about the connection we'd like to make between the old outlet mall, Lowe's, and up to the mall. To me, that's probably one of the, would be a really desirable cross-access, I'm not saying we necessarily need to specifically mention that, but is anything happening with that? Are we trying to do anything with that?
Well, the hotel is under construction behind Chick-fil-A right now. And at some point, we'd like to,
It's a big hotel, too. It's bigger than I was expecting. I didn't know what to
Yeah,
visually
it's-
think
You
of
see it coming out
Yeah,
of going
it's-
north.
yeah, so as part of that site plan, there is a dedicated easement on the east side of that property that goes north and south.
Right.
And I think it's 60 feet wide, if I recall right, something to that effect. So, and there's also the easement goes along the whole south side of the property from the 31 to the east end of that line, so it's kind of like an L shape. So at some point here, we need to figure out how we're going to make at least a connection from there up to Lowe's.
Right.
We do know that the mall is interested in selling that parcel that they have there on Day Drive. So, some ways, it would be nice if I think from that point going south to the actual mall property might be a bit of a challenge, and the mall has not been really supportive of that right now. But our thought is at least if we could get it up to Lowe's and get that connected, that would at least start that, and let's say we get half of it. I'd like to actually approach Lowe's. It's been a while since I've talked to them, but they do realize their obligation in providing that roadway. There is that part of their PUD there. It's a bit of a knoll. There's kind of a hill there, but maybe in a combination of using some of that land and some of the land that's where that the mall owns, is that potential could be something like a multifamily residential development or something like that. That might help get somebody to go in and be interested in acquiring that property, creating that gap, filling that gap. We get Lowe's to do their part, the obligation to do the rest on the Chick-fil-A hotel property. We get that finished out, and we at least kind of get that initial loop around that way.
If we were able to get the Chick-fil-A and the hotel traffic an access back out through Lowe's, that alone would be
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Where
And
there's
if
a
you-
light.
If you establish that, then I think the motivation, I think Williams was motivated at one point to be involved in that as well. So you'd be, I think they have a key piece there. They're on the backside of their property. I mean, I don't, want to beat this horse to death, but it surfaced when I was reading through that part of the
Yeah.
master plan.
Yeah, yeah.
There's probably not to me, a more important connection that we could make than that. How nice would it be to be able to go from the old outlet mall or, Hobby Lobby, you go all the way to Walmart and never go out on a major highway or road. It would be so nice to be able to do that. But I'll just keep bringing it up, so.
It's still on our radar, and I think the key is the acquisition of that mall property. If that were to be, and I think right now it's zoned, I think it's,
Let's turn on the zoning.
what's it zoned?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's R1, so it's, what we would do is, we've talked about, we don't want a connection to Day Drive, but Day Drive could be shortened up, and so the cul-de-sac would maybe be moved to the east edge of that property, and the remainder of that potentially could be vacated, so that allows for some more buildable area, but that would make it attractive for somebody to get in there, and then at least we'd have that connection between Chick-fil-A and Lowe's.
So that being said, when we get to this map 4, we need to, that is yellow right now, we need to think, maybe we ought to talk about that when we,
That's
a little later on here in our meeting, when we start looking at the map, that property you just talked about is yellow.
Yeah.
We would want to change that, right?
That's
Right
a
here
good
on
point.
on this.
Yeah, I think, and the key to that would be, we have to be mindful of that, though, is it's predicated on a condition that there wouldn't be
Day
access
Drive
to
gets-
Day Drive.
Sure.
So that would be, we might want to take a look and see how we can do that. But yeah, that would be a good, I would suggest, Now, half the property is wetland. It's kind of one of the headwaters of the Kids Creek, so it's definitely not usable. But the upland on the west side, and maybe connecting to some of that Lowe's property, I think we identified potentially around 3 acres or so.
Yeah, if you did about like this much. Actually, a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, they have to adjust for roads and, because you'd have to put in something. Some of that would be the road itself, but like you have about that much usable area.
Right.
Steve, did you just have the current land use plan or the current zoning up?
This is, zoning is this.
Okay.
And then there's a layer of all the planned developments, because Lowe's is, the building is in R1, but there's a PUD over it, so. The other potential thing you could do is amend the Lowe's PUD to add the piece of property.
It's
That's true.
currently master planned as other
Master plan as other,
in the existing land use.
or is existing land use?
Yeah, it's other, and then in our proposed new future land use, that area is master planned as low-density residential. That low-density residential doesn't seem consistent with what you're talking about trying to accomplish.
Right.
Right. That's why we were saying that low-density residential, the one reason we just haven't changed it is because it still has that day drive access. So the property owners on Day Drive, the residences that are there are really concerned about any connection to the west. So we've kind of left it at that until there's some alteration to Day Drive. That's why.
So effectively, a developer would have to come in, propose to buy the property, alter Day Drive, and then present us with a conditional rezone.
Well, like Steve mentioned, probably one of the best ways to do this would probably amend the Lowe's PUD.
But if Lowe's didn't want to, you couldn't do it, could you?
True.
Yeah.
I think we would just have to put something in there to, I mean, I don't have any problem identifying it as something other than low-density residential. Let's say it's going to be high-density residential. I just want to make sure that that specific location is not accessed by Day Drive if it were to be used. And we'll have to think about that one a little bit.
If somebody wants to use that for residential property, though, the developer, wouldn't they want to get at it from Day Drive rather than try to market it where you're going to come through a commercial area, Lowe's and all that stuff back there?
Well, right now, somebody could go in there and put some single-family homes. I don't know how many they could get in there based on the wetlands in there. And that's fine, that's what's there. But the concern, there's two concerns. One is the existing residents that are there in the single-family homes on Day Drive do not want to have anything other than single-family on that area. So putting an apartment building there is something that they've been pretty opposed to doing that. The other thing is we do not want a connection to Day Drive beyond that. The road commission is concerned about Day Drive and its access onto South Airport because it's a little off-center from the access into the Walmart, so they don't want a lot of traffic out that way. So that's so they're preferring that it stay low-impact development, like single-family versus, let's say, multifamily.
Okay, thanks.
It appears that from the last home or two there, that it's pretty wet right in there. It looks like it's wetland right away, so there's probably nothing buildable till you get to the very west side, so,
Right.
Right.
you know, if that were acquired by an individual or anybody else.
Because that's part of, that like wet part extends onto Lowe's, like a bunch of Lowe's property is in a conservation easement. And like that environmentally sensitive area extends right into this property right here.
So I think what needs to happen is in the future connection description for Lowe's Grand Traverse Mall,
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be described as a future desired connection, but a statement needs to be added
Okay.
that predicates that change on the cul-de-sac for Day Drive being moved east.
Okay, that's good.
And so
Where are
that-
you looking, Chris? What section?
I'm on master plan page 46, and it's the fifth paragraph, or second paragraph from the bottom. And it talks about the Lowe's Grand Traverse Mall, and it talks all about the connection that we're desiring. But we're also desiring that Day Drive not be connected. And so I think if that was added to this statement,
Yeah,
then we would have ample, text to point at and say, well, that was what was intended, not a full connection. And then it strikes me that we really want to provide for some master planning that promotes the rezone of that parcel to grease the skids for the whole thing to happen.
mm-hmm,
That's the kind of the exact way I was thinking of it.
Yeah, if we were to have that description in there, that requirement, I would feel comfortable then that we could put the future land use designation as, let's say, high-density residential.
yeah.
We just need to make sure that's very clear that should that parcel be developed, it would not have access to Day Drive.
Right. All these pieces have to come together.
Right.
And you, Mr. Mrs. Developer, need to make it happen. Otherwise, don't bother coming to talk to us.
In a nice way.
In a nice way.
Yeah,
No, I agree with John. A Day Drive connection is it's not a good road. It's not a very good quality road, and the residents historically have been pretty vocal on Day Drive
Yeah.
about things like that. So we would just shorten Day Drive up, move the cul-de-sac back, and make that property accessible through that new access point. But, I mean, in reality, we may not be very far from making that connection to the hotel and Chick-fil-A. I think if you're able to make that connection happen, I think the rest of it might happen quicker because boy, look how close we are to making this what we want. And I know it's mentioned here and it's mentioned it's listed on the map as one of your connections, and so I appreciate you.
But that property is needed to make that connection,
I
this
think
property
so.
we're talking
It
about,
is,
right?
it is. I mean, you could possibly work with Williams, but at some point you got to kind of jog over to the Lowe's. It would make sense to kind of have that there. Plus,
there's a big grade difference there too.
yeah, plus with the investment, they would be constructing their portion of it. And that's where I do think it would be a desirable area to have some higher density residential. I could see something back there, as long as there's that access to it, both from Chick-fil-A and from Lowe's. The one thing too that's a little tricky on this whole thing is that Lowe's kind of, the way you traverse through their parking lot really needs to be designed a little bit different and more, less like a parking lot drive and more like a private road type of a situation where you might need some additional islands in there so that you can really kind of have the flow of traffic not being interfered by cars that might be crossing over going in through the parking lot.
Do you have any leverage to make that, if everything else were to happen, is there leverage to make Lowe's create them changes you just explained?
That's a good question. I would tell them that you have a potential to have some additional customers in our plan ultimately that would be driving by your store. I don't know, you can see they're already using a good portion of their parking lot on the south side of the building for, I don't know if you've ever been there, it's kind of.
It's all storage.
Well, they have this like drive-through, you go in there for pickup and they have all the like different pallets of stuff out there and you just, so it's functioning as an extension of their store. They're gonna have to move that off to the side, but I think their parking isn't really that much of an issue I mean, even their lot out to the east or the west side of the building, I've never seen that full out there. So I think it would, what I would be encouraging them to say, look, this is gonna get foot traffic to your store better and get people there. I mean, ultimately, particularly with our goal, you know, like Joe was saying, where you could come all the way from, you know, somebody's at Home Depot and they can't find it there, they getting run over to Lowe's, you know, it might help
I
them that
wouldn't
way.
use that example with Lowe's, but I would, you
No,
know.
but I think most retailers would probably, I would think, would
Yeah.
like to add a traffic. I'm not saying they would, but they realized that the goal was always, their responsibility was always to extend the road to the mall, so they do.
That is right in their PUD,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
and I did, it's been, probably been 2 or 3 years since I talked to the people down in North Carolina, but they do recognize that they are responsible for that based on the language that we had in the PUD.
And you kind of, as you try to eyeball it, though, and you think, okay, they're gonna come in through that traffic light, and just follow the very, you know, west edge of the parking lot all the way around. You know, there's only that one hairpin area there, you know, if you can somehow, smooth out that corner a little bit, you know, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, that's some pretty good traffic calming. You're not gonna get people just, you know, you don't want a straight shot from
Right.
Lowe's to the mall. You want you want a little slowdown in there, so just the fact that they can get through is, you know, using the perimeter of that Lowe's lot isn't the worst thing in the world, I don't think, to do that, so. Okay, well, I appreciate the
I got
conversation.
one more question.
Yeah.
We're talking about potentially cutting Day Drive off and not going to where its current terminus is with the, and moving it all east. Is there any access needed off of Day Drive to the south, to the property that's owned by the mall or to the water tower?
That's a big retention pond right there.
That's there's
a
a big
tower there.
retention basin there.
Do they need to access Day Drive? Because if so, you wouldn't
They
be able
do.
to cut that off, but if they don't, then
don't.
maybe you could.
They do not. The one thing that we do have there is the cell tower that's actually owned by the township. That's kind of unfortunately, is kind of in the way.
It's got to be accessible too, don't it?
Yeah, it's got to have access to it, and we would want to make sure that that is maintained somehow.
Maybe you could get an easement through one of the businesses to the west, since it's just
Yeah.
a cell tower, you don't use it much.
We do have the easement that goes along the south side of the Chick-fil-A property and then heads north, so that potentially could be the one that used access to that. We could arrange for that easement to provide access to that parcel.
And if you did that, then you could eliminate that cul-de-sac and shorten Day Drive.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, going farther south is a little tricky. It would really, because we have the retention basin that the mall has on the east side, and then on the west side are some smaller retention basins that Williams has. You know, so there's kind of a little bit of like a berm area there. It's not wide enough for a private drive, but so it might require some adjustment to those. But the engineer, when Gordy Fraser kind of sketched out something, it's still doable. It's just going to be a little tricky.
Who owns the property behind the Day Drive or to the north of the Day Drive cul-de-sac?
That's
Also the
the,
mall.
yeah, it's
That's the
Brookfield
piece.
Properties, yep. And they've indicated to us that they are willing to sell that property.
Any idea what they want for it?
No, they haven't listed it or anything like that. They just said that they would be interested in selling it. We've had people come in there and wanting to do things with it like higher density residential, and we've been saying not based on its current configuration. So I think it would be more attractive if we had different access to it. Particularly if we could use a little bit of that Lowe's property, that would make it even more appealing.
How many acres is that piece?
This
It's like 3 acres, is it?
3.5
3.5.
of the current one, including like the wet areas.
Yeah, I would say probably half of that is upland, so almost less than 2 acres.
That
That's a
whole
nice
piece is
little
only
spot
3.5
for our-
acres.
Yeah.
For our tiny house sort of ideas. I mean, it's a good location for that, but.
Yeah.
didn't want to get too far off the weeds, but I didn't bring that up tonight anyway, so.
Well, that's a good adjustment, because it makes a lot more sense, I think, to have that in the map.
And to describe that in the future connections area, that's absolutely, no, very good catch.
All right. That the only two things you wanted to cover off before we go back through comments?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll kind of go back to square one then, and I'll just open it up. Anybody who has some things that they've noticed or wanted to talk about with the staff tonight? John, you got some post-it notes?
Well, only on that one, that Hartman Hammond, I see you guys tweak it considerably. I'm thinking it could stand a little more tweaking. Starting on page 41. The very first sentence under Hartman Hammond, it's a pretty awkward sentence, and I'm thinking maybe just another word should be added. It says discontinuous street systems are inefficient and channel traffic on the relatively few transportation points of the transportation network causes undue congestion. Something's missing. But I think if you, in the second line, if you put a comma after network and then added the word which, I think that's what you're trying to say?
You're right.
Yep, that's correct.
And actually, when I read that now, maybe could just be, it could almost be deleted. I mean, because it's kind of starting off as a, because the second sentence talks about the benefits of a well-connected street network,
True.
and that might be a better way to start the whole thing, and not making that statement. I would be more inclined to do that. And then that way we don't have to,
That's okay too.
yeah, I like
me.
that.
Yeah,
Makes it a little bit leaner.
there we go.
I guess I'm still thinking it's a little more of a sales job than I think we've got in most of the rest of the document, but
Well, we can cut it back on it as well.
well, like in the second paragraph under Hartman Hammond there at the bottom of page 41, provides an essential connection that greatly improves. I mean, we could say it provides a connection that improves without all the superlatives.
Sure.
And since it doesn't exist, maybe instead of using the word provides, we could say would provide or could provide, whatever you want, but we're talking future, it's not there now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
And I
Make it more future facing.
was thinking the next sentence, you probably don't need, about creating a corridor would include management, new ideas, or new development focused on industrial blah, 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 because the very next sentence talks about access management and limiting of driveways are gonna be essential, so. I mean, I'm not sure how we would manage everything along there, but we certainly need to manage access. I don't know if we've really given a lot of thought to exactly what sort of uses would or wouldn't be appropriate.
Well, it was kind of continuing, I guess what it was, the intent of that was just to state that this is not going to be a retail commercial corridor. So something to that effect, and we can take a look at maybe wording that a little bit better.
Okay.
I was trying to counter, a lot of people say, well, it's going to be another South Airport Road, and it's like, well, the reason South Airport Road is the way it is there's a lot of commercial retail, particularly retail commercial along it, and this is going to be one of a different character, so.
We certainly hope so.
And that's the key to it, is that future land use and the access management.
And then, on that next page then, on 42, the first two full paragraphs are kind of talking about the east-west corridor study and the PEL, but I think that's also talked about 20 pages later, so I'm not sure we need it in both places. Wasn't it, I thought, in
It's,
61 or thereabouts, wasn't it the same?
It is probably in the transportation and
Yeah,
infrastructure.
it's in there somewhere already, I saw it.
It might also be in the appendix.
Maybe that's right.
Yeah,
saw
it's in
it.
the appendix. Well, we can delete that part from there, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's
If it's
what I was
already in the
thinking, those two
appendix.
don't need to be there. And then the third paragraph there, I don't know if that's been there a while and I just now seen it, but I wrote in my margin next to that, bypass, with big question marks, but we never talked about that as a bypass, I don't think, have we?
Well, it's, when we talked with the road commission and their consultants, they said that they would design it to meet the requirements should it be designated as US 31.
But that may be creating World War III with Traverse City and God knows who else if we're starting to create US 31 going
Right.
along Hartman Hammond and not through downtown. And if there ever was to be a bypass, God, years ago, I used to think maybe along Beitner and Keystone made more sense than going up 31, but I don't know about the topography and how much more road work it need doing, but I guess that third paragraph there just sort of jumped out at me and I was thinking, I'm not so sure I like the idea of putting that in there.
I want to make sure that we stay positive on that east-west connection, that corridor in some way, that Garfield Township is supportive of that, whether it's Hartman Hammond or some other deal, but I don't want to start taking too much of it away, even though right now it's not real popular. In the future, we could just keep saying this, it's got to happen, so.
I think we've still got language that talks about our thinking that it's going to happen. I mean, that's what we said at the bottom of page 41, even with taking out some of the superlatives, we're predicting or forecasting
Still
that it would be
We want to.
another connection. But even if we do that connection someday, that isn't necessarily mean it's going to be the bypass that's been talked about for 50 years, and that it's going to become US 131 or US 31. That's a whole nother animal that I'm not sure we want to just sort of bury that as a paragraph in here, that that's where we think it's going to be the new location for US 31.
Wasn't there some talk one time about some signage, though, that they were gonna want to send trucks down Beitner if they could make it all season? Well, I think it is all season, but somebody talked about that once here. I don't know if it was the road commission, but they were gonna, and then, so they would try to get some traffic out of town or out of the South Airport.
Yeah, but it's not the same as US 31.
Right, so-
As a national route, so
Right.
that's the thing, it changes it. But like I said, they, in our conversation with the road commission, they were going to, if they ever do the Hartman Hammond crossing, they would design that to be accommodating and meet the standards and requirements for it to be a US highway. But that's, you know.
Is that covered adequately in the appendix? I forget where that was.
Well, that statement is not in the appendix, but those references to the PAL and to the east-west corridor study are in there.
Right.
And we
It's
could
more
eliminate,
kind of- yeah.
eliminate those 3 paragraphs there.
That would be my thought, but it's only one person talking.
I don't mind maybe softening the language, but to Molly's point, the town board still has been very adamant about their support of the crossing, and I won't use the word bypass, but it's, probably the biggest selling point for that connection is gonna be this summer when the parkway's torn up and you have to wait 2 hours to get across South Airport Road, people will probably realize that,
And
you
it
know what,
rains and
we need another
airport floods
crossing
out.
across this river, My parents bought the farm on Hartman Road in 1955, and the road commission said, well, we want to make sure you understand that this is going to be connected to Hammond Road and be a way around Traverse City, and that was 1955. So, it's nothing new. It just hasn't happened. It's something that should have literally happened 70 years ago, and it just has not. So, 75 years ago, whatever that is. So, I supported it being in there and the importance of it being explained. We soften the language, but I don't think we want to weaken it too much. We still, I think, answer to the town board, and the town board's in full support of it, so I think our master plan should reflect that, so. And it probably won't happen in any of our lifetimes, so, who knows?
Well, if we live to be 150 at night.
Maybe. So. Well,
I think
we're not any closer than we were in 1955, I guess, so.
Oh, but they've spent many millions of dollars studying it, though.
That's true. We have done that.
Yeah.
And Hammond Road is built to accommodate it now. As soon as you get across the river, it's built for carrying traffic, so.
I think there's
They're a
much
little bit
stronger-
closer, yeah.
I think there's a much stronger case to be made for it with regards to connectivity. But my understanding of the bypass aspect of it still is that all the studies that have been done show that traffic comes from the hinterlands into Traverse City and then goes back out. And that there's not really data that's been documented of people, a mass amount of traffic coming from the south through Traverse City and never stopping, so that a bypass you have like for an urban center like Grand Rapids or other major cities, that it's not there. So all I would say is I think that hanging our hat on connectivity and being able to move around our community is the bigger need for, that kind of connection. And I think that the provisions that you're talking about and the text that's in there continues to support it as being a future need.
There's just limited places you can cross the river. The river's not going anywhere.
Yep.
Well, we thought too, with the reconstruction of Front Street and the Grandview Parkway and, some of the concerns made by people in the city that, part of that, the reason MDOT's doing that is it's the US 31 corridor, and in some areas they might have like a US highway where it functions as a bypass, but then you have like a business route or whatever, but it could alleviate the city from having to deal maybe with some of the heavier truck traffic and so forth by having this as a truck route. So that's why we were just mentioning it in there as well. But I will say that with the MPO starting up, one of the things they're going to have to do is do a metropolitan transportation plan, which is a long-range, about a 20-year plan that will have to look at options of, things that are potential for the future of this area. So that will probably address a lot more of the transportation needs, at least of the immediate urban area. And so some of that could be picked up on this as well in those conversations. So this, I think we just wanted to make sure that there was something in there that kind of supported that. And the reference to the studies was only in this part just to give context that there is, it's beyond just the desires of the Garfield Township Master Plan, but that there are these other efforts. So, but those are in the appendix in more detail as well.
Anything else?
I don't think I had other stuff flagged.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions or things they've picked up on?
I had a couple of things. On page 9, I recognize that you guys added the establishment. And there's a paragraph just speaking of Anishinaabe peoples, Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. I thought that maybe the tribe, maybe on their website, or it maybe just a little bit more. I like it, but if it could be enhanced just a little bit more. The tribe traces its history back well before the white settlement of the region. I don't know if there's any more. It just seems it feels like if you're going to make the statement, that maybe there's some more language to pay respect to the Anishinaabe people's history here. But well before the white settlement of the region just feels kind of weak. And, maybe there's
Hundreds
something-
of years before.
hundreds of years before, and, I don't know. I don't want to
Yeah, no,
overstate it, but,
we can add.
cultural heritage and members of our community kind of thing.
Yeah, it's probably, a way to enhance that a little bit more than what's in there.
I mean, I guess if I were on Anishinaabe, which I'm not, but I read it, I'd be like, oh, well, of course we've been here since you white people. So anyway. I was curious if you guys could add, and I'm sorry, I went through the whole thing, and kind of bounced back and forth trying to figure out what was different, but I probably picked up stuff that I could have picked up before, so I apologize for that.
No worries.
I was looking at the page 10 and page 11, and I was thinking it would be great if, I recognize that there's the source U.S. Census Bureau. Bureau spelled wrong in the first column on the left,
Oh, yeah.
on the bottom.
Catch?
I just look. I just read it. I was like, wait, something's wrong here. What about a date that just says places this data is only relative to a certain census, and maybe the U.S. Census Bureau as of such and such a date? Because I was like, oh, I wonder when this data is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of it's, so just so you know, some of it's range of data, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not there's a couple of sources of data from the Census Bureau. There's the actual count that happens every decennial, but some of this is actually sampled data like over a 5-year span, so it might actually be a range of dates.
Well, I guess if asking to add the dates.
Yeah, no, I can add that in
But
there.
but if it complicates it so much
No,
as to
it's-
be meaningless, then maybe
No,
not.
it doesn't, it's not meaningless, but it does, it might look weird because it won't say just 2020. It might
Right.
say, some of it might say 2020, it also might say 2015 to 2019, or something like that.
Yeah,
Because
if-
it's sample
Yeah.
data.
If you have to caveat it so much so that it looks weird, then.
No,
okay.
I'll figure, but, yeah, we will definitely put some dates in, and that's a good point, because people do need to know that we're not gonna be updating this data either, it's at this moment, so.
Right. And the municipal water and municipal sewer maps, we all commented, or at least I don't know if we all did, but some of us commented that the lines were really heavy, and I don't think the line weight changed.
Yeah, we added the sewer lines themselves. You were thinking just the water and sewer lines themselves and not the like buffer around them?
Or so the water line is the bolder, the heavier line inside.
We could eliminate the
We
buffer.
could just do that, yeah.
We can eliminate the buffer in it.
Or the buffer could go to 200 feet maybe instead of 300 feet. 'cause
Yeah.
That might make it just a little bit more. Let's see.
Yeah.
We could do it, we'll do it a couple different ways and kind of see what it looks, but it might be a little bit more than people can read.
I was curious, and again, this is something maybe I missed last time. There's on the future land use map, there are the two properties that are actually part of Traverse City over on the east side of the township. But we include them, showing them as if we have, am I correct?
Wait,
Oh, yeah.
what are you referring to?
There's the blue area.
Oh, yes, okay.
Attached to the airport, and then just south of that, isn't there some kind of
Traverse
industrial
Field.
park?
There's that and then
There's
Traverse Field
Sunset
Industrial
right there.
Park right there.
Aren't
Yeah.
they coming back?
Oh, yep. So there's two things. That one is the Traverse Field Industrial Park. That's under a,
Contractual easement.
yeah, it's what's the act? 451 agreement?
425 agreement.
Okay.
That will end in 2042, I think.
Yeah. So that will at some point revert back to the township.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And the
then we can
airport,
Close the pot shop that's on the corner.
The airport one is under review right now. We don't realize, there's no evidence of an actual annexation for that.
oh,
And the boundary,
State Boundary Commission.
the state boundary commission, and the boundary GIS file from the state actually shows this as being part of the township. So we're trying to dig into the details of figuring out
still
where.
under review then. Great,
Yeah,
okay.
so
Yeah, they're looking for some files from 1948
from the
or something.
40s, yeah.
Something like that. So there's question on whether, it's, one part is part of the airport, and so there's this assumption that it's part of the airport, but if it was, that's not the issue. The issue is it in the city or in the township, not the ownership.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the city could own it, just like they own Hickory Hills, and it's township
Yep.
Right.
regulated.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's the one that's, I know that is still being looked into.
Yeah.
So then skipping forward to the non-motorized plan. I can't remember if we talked about it or not, but would there be any benefit to showing existing versus proposed?
Oh, yeah, we did talk about it briefly. So it's, the plan just kind of shows it all as everything together, including a lot of those things do exist right now. So to show, we looked, our current one, in the current master plan does not do that. I see what people were saying, though, to distinguish between what's there now and what is like an anticipated thing to, like, what could be a project to add on.
And so,
Yeah.
if you can graphically do that, that it makes sense, maybe consider it. And then the other thing is there's the new sidewalk / trail along Cedar Run Road. And I guess to me, what they put in is more of I think of a sidewalk as being a traditional concrete sidewalk. And they really put in what I think is more of a shared use. And I was just wondering if we ought not change that to shared use. But I'm not really.
But I think on this one, it's showing shared use. I think it's on the south side, and then the north side, we're showing
Sidewalk.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to connect those Royal Drives down to,
Right, a lot of people
Front
walk
Street.
that.
yeah.
Yep. Okay. I don't think I have much more. Oh, I don't know that it's a big deal. I kind of liked the bullets. When you get into the goals and objectives, in the old version, you had bullet points. And in this version, they're enumerated. And I kind of don't necessarily know that the enumeration to me always implies this is the first thing objective and this is the second objective.
Prioritization.
And the bullet points just say, these are all goals and they're kind of equal.
We were just trying to relate back to then the implementation plan. That's at the back end, starts on page 77.
So then do those numbers match?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that
All right.
they're, yeah,
Now that makes sense to me then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that
and
connection.
I think it's safe to say that none of those are really prioritized. I mean, they might be in terms of how they were developed, but they are all just, they're not weighted in any way or anything like that.
I think that's all I picked out. Thanks.
Yeah.
Should we state that those have a connection to another section?
We could just, explain that, these are,
Do-
yeah.
so that-
Yeah, we could put that, there's a little introductory paragraph
Yeah.
on top of page 55.
55, that'd be a good spot for it.
We could say that they're enumerated, they're not, something to the effect that they're not set in any priority or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that they're referenced in this section and in the implementation.
Note that as a footnote kind of thing.
Yeah.
A footnote or another sentence just
Yeah, I
explaining
think we'll
it,
add it
yeah.
into the top of page 55, is added in another sentence. There's that, like, it just talks about this section, not as,
I just remember one more thing. I thought that in an early iteration, there was or maybe I'm thinking of some other document. I really like and appreciate the different neighborhoods, the Barlow Park, Garfield Center. There's no map that shows where they're at.
yeah, so in the future land use map, we did have a map, didn't we?
So at one point we did,
We could add one in.
because we kind of merged that idea into the actual future land use designations, but kind of pointing them out as like map of the future land use areas, because they each have their own name. Yeah, sort of
Right.
adding that back in to tie into that.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be a foldout, I don't think, but,
Yeah.
we all know where they're at.
Right.
In general, But somebody coming at this fresh might be, like, just having,
We might be able to see if we can, I like the idea of maybe having like a little location map, actually with embedded, maybe we put it in as a sidebar for each one of
yeah, that'd
those.
be fancy. Yeah.
So that you don't have to flip to a map, but you get some reference maybe in the context of where it's at.
Right.
Okay, yeah, we can take a look at doing that.
Yeah, it wouldn't even need to be a map of the whole township, just like you said,
Right.
some context.
Couple of main roads or.
Yeah, because they're
Yeah.
not
Right.
intuitive to anybody but us.
Right. Yeah, and putting them right next to each one in that section would make a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Location map
I think-
sidebars for each.
I think that's it then, for real, this time.
That's okay. No,
Your 2 minutes was up a long time.
I know.
Anything else anybody wants to go over you picked out?
Joe, I had one more question, and it may be not the time, I'm not sure. In the draft of the letter to the Watershed Center,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you wanted to cover that separately, or I know, in the second paragraph of that water environment, you said, "We made some minor text changes," and I was wondering if you could tell us where those are, so we could see them, and know what is different about what you made in response to the watershed that wasn't in the earlier drafts, because I have no idea what changes you made.
Well, there's no changes to the, I mean, I don't have anything readily available that I can share with you, but I could provide that to you.
they mostly commented, I believe, the natural resources section.
Right, that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
flip to.
Well, it looked like in her earlier letter, she had, I mean, she was really doing the drafting,
They drafted
suggesting
their own
herself.
section.
But I didn't know,
yeah.
I didn't know if any of what she suggested was what you changed, and some you did, some you
Not a
didn't, or
lot.
I had no way
Yeah.
of knowing.
Yeah.
I can provide you with that. There's really not a lot. I mean, it's not changing any of the objectives or anything of that nature. It was almost, they have a style preference in how it's written. We were trying to convey to what we currently kind of have in the master plan right now and in the ordinance. So,
She had had a couple of suggestions that struck me as probably being logical, like we talked about protecting views and vistas along rivers. She suggested adding "and lakes," and then in the same sort of sentence, changing the word "river" to "surface waters." Sort of makes sense if we're trying to protect rivers, we're trying to protect lakes, or a view of the river, a view of the lake, but
Looks like we actually did include that one, so protected vistas and views along rivers and lakes.
if I was guessing, I was going to guess you did include that, but I
And,
don't want to
yeah.
guess.
No, I see what you're saying, yeah.
yeah,
There should also be an "and" in here.
well, I think I'm part of that too. It was, so they have their verbiage that they use in terms of their, I wouldn't call it their industry, but the area that they work in. And what we were trying to be cognizant of is what has kind of already been in the plan to some extent, and not getting too technical to lose people on. We didn't want to use terms that people might not understand what
I
they're, so we're trying to.
totally
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's why we took
Yeah.
some of that with a grain of salt when we were trying to put that in together, so.
Mhm.
Did you, is that all you had? John?
I got some little thing if you,
Oh, go ahead, okay.
so, this don't amount to much, but on page 55, I don't even know how I noticed this. You're talking about the power systems, but we do have City Light Power as a provider down in Cass, so if you want to add that.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then, earlier, I don't know, somebody brought up about in the water and the sewer maps about narrowing them 300-foot buffers down, but that's in the ordinance, that 300 foot. If you're within that with your building, you're entitled or you're required to hook up. So that's, maybe ought to keep it at 300. I think that's,
I think on the sewer, but not the water.
okay. But anyway, that's.
You're right, there's that 300
That's what,
foot.
that's why I assume Gordy Fraser has maybe, I don't know if they did that map or.
No, we did that, we got the lines from Gordy Fraser, but we put the buffer in, but maybe you're right on the sewer, it's 300 feet, but I think on the water, we do not have that requirement.
Okay.
That's correct, yeah. I think that's why I went with 300 feet initially when we did the buffer, but yeah, it doesn't look as clean on when it's printed out. And I did get updated data from Gordy Frazier, because we did get the water line going up to Long Lake along Cedar Run, so got that from their GIS person.
That was it, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? So I gave you a few things to tweak. Now, are you going to get us a cleaned up version before we get down, sit down with the township then, or what are you going to do?
I think instead of printing out the whole thing, what I'd like to do is we'll print out those changes that were the pages that were changed
Okay.
and provide you in your next
We just
packet for
pop them in
the
and pop
March
them out.
3rd, March 13th meeting, and then one look at it, and then, well, because we want to get it in front of the board for the joint meeting.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
And if there's nothing else, we're going to, when were you going to talk about the Schmuckel letter?
Yeah.
And actually, a couple things with the map itself.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about a couple of things with
Okay,
the
go
map.
ahead. Yeah.
Why don't we go to the town line?
Did that area? Yeah. So we did have someone else come into Township Hall and talk to us about a certain area.
Over at the town line in South Airport, there's some properties along, that front along South Airport. So what you're looking at here is our current zoning. So the yellow is R1, single-family residential. The orange is R3, high-density residential. And then the pink is, that's where the gun shop is at, that's local commercial. And so the plan for that area, well, this is what we have drafted, but the current plan shows that area.
And in the current master plan, it is, or in the current,
It's all high-density residential
mhm.
for the most part. Well, except for that one parcel to the south there, but it's all
Yeah.
high-density residential. Recognizing that Holcomb Street is actually a plat, so it's, there are homes, single-family homes there. There's some mobile homes and so forth that are in that location, but it's actually platted. It's actually a subdivision plat. So the likelihood of that being developed as multifamily is, at least high-density multifamily, is probably low. And so what we wanted to do is recognize that and maybe looking at it from that point going north to see those properties. Obviously, they would require some assembly because they're not really sizable for multifamily. But this is similar to an area that we have over on South Airport over there by Sam's Club, where there has been a couple rezonings that will lead it to ultimately being assembled. So one of the property owners in this location came into our office and was talking with us about, and so we kind of recognize that it would be better to be high-density residential, and then maybe this other part would be moderate density, which would allow some higher densities, such as things like duplexes and so forth.
And when we had drafted this draft of the master plan and future land use that's in your binders, we had put that all as moderate density, sort of recognizing the plat at its density, but kind of after looking at it and talking with this person who came in the office, there's already a couple properties zoned R3, and at least along South Airport it seemed to make more sense as a high-density residential, and also would match kind of what's going on the East Bay side, which has some higher density residential on that side. But keeping that facing South Airport, and then everything to the south of that, more than moderate,
Get
not,
an access management plan going at the same time.
and get an access management at the same time for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, really the only way to make it in multifamily in that area is to do some land assembly. Somebody's gonna have to put some of those parcels together. It's just
Right.
not gonna work.
So you're saying north of Holcomb stays future land use, high density,
Right.
Yep, as
and
currently.
Holcomb itself would be low or moderate?
Moderate.
Yeah, moderate.
Moderate? And
Mostly
then-
because of the parcel size that's in there is more about moderate, yeah.
Then south of Holcomb is moderate.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep,
And it allows for kind of a transition from the higher density along South Airport, going along Town Line,
Mhm.
stepping down.
Right.
Intensity.
I've got this vague recollection that southeast quadrant of that is all wet, right? Isn't that why it was green in the,
Mostly it was, there is a home on it.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
a house on it.
It's the one to the south that's even bigger and is definitely all wet, and there's nothing on that one. And then south of that is the Land Conservancy's property.
Yeah, that one, there is,
Yeah.
I mean, it looks mostly wet to me right there, looking at some of the vegetation there, but it is, you know, we figured there's a house on it, so.
At least to that point, we could
there
also
is some-
split it too.
Some amount of
Yeah.
upland a little bit.
Yeah. Or even
Nobody's
explain
gonna-
it.
Nobody's
Yeah.
gonna develop the wetlands, so.
Right. Or explain in words that the wet part, yeah.
75-foot buffer, they're not gonna have much room to.
Yeah. Yeah. It could go either way for that reason. Or be shown either way. Those oranges didn't quite look at,
Well,
they
sometimes
looked
it's-
more different on my screen earlier today, but not this one. No.
It's different when it's projected.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that.
So that was one adjustment we were wanting to make in this a little bit. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
What is Holcomb Street now? It's a platted subdivision,
It
so
is.
it's not in any way going to have more than 2 units on one lot. Is it, or is it?
Right,
Yeah,
it
I mean,
is- Yeah. It's currently R1.
Yeah, it's R1. I wonder what does it have the parcel sizes on there?
This is .28, so about a
0.28,
quarter, yeah. And we consider our moderate as like 3 to 6 units per acre in the future land use designation.
But it's a platted sub, so it's platted to be
Yeah,
one single
it's
family.
probably, yeah,
that's
a
it.
single family,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
unless it's
I don't know if it's
not
specific,
necessarily, if there are restrictions to that, say you have to be single-family homes, but if it doesn't, there could
They
be the
could put a
possibilities that
duplex.
maybe you could get
Right.
duplexes in there.
yeah.
You can
There's
see
nothing
it's
we
also-
would, yeah.
It is a
have on
county
that.
street there,
Yeah.
Holcomb. It's dedicated right away. I mean, right now, the designation is R3, high density, or excuse me,
Or,
it's just high density residential is the designation right now.
On Holcomb Street?
in the master plan that we currently have.
Yeah, the current
yeah.
master plan. That's why we were trying to bring it down a little bit.
Even to that amount, yeah.
To be more realistic to what potentially could be done there from a residential. And then that one parcel that's to the south of that, that is currently identified as agricultural rural land. The one that's got the house on it.
Yeah,
It could either keep it as the medium density or go back to the agricultural rural land, or could do the other designation.
as like a conservation, which we've been putting all like the
Yeah.
wetlands
That would be the other
as
option.
conservation, yeah.
Pretty wet
Yeah,
down in
Yes.
there.
we could just do that for that portion, I think, if that makes sense.
I think it does.
Yeah,
Okay.
Personally, I'm okay with the idea of doing the delineation like you've got it north of the Holcomb sub, all that higher density.
okay.
It's good transitional. I mean, you got it, it's all industrial to the west, so.
Yeah.
So that one parcel, like kind of right to the south, that one there will do the same as
As everything else
conservancy
further
property, so it'll be
south.
recreation conservation. Okay.
Frankly, even the back of this one.
Yeah, what I was just gonna say, what are you doing
Uh,
with that last westerly vertical piece there?
It's one parcel. It's split zoned right now.
How does that get accessed?
Well, it's all one parcel off of South Airport. It's where the gun
So
shop
it's-
is at.
Cliff must have the whole thing.
And so that's the zoning. So the
zoning.
front end
It's
is
one
local
parcel.
commercial, the back end is low-density residential.
Parcel layer is that.
See the guy's got the big sign out there Phil wanted?
No, he's the one he's got the gun shop that's
Cliff's
there.
Gun Shop is in there.
Yeah.
Is he still
Sign
open?
right in there, somebody who's, might be just over the line,
Hmm.
looking for Phil.
Oh,
Fill that wetland in back there.
okay.
Okay. And we need to designate it as conservation to make sure they don't fill the wetlands.
Other than where that one home is to the south of Holcomb, that's pretty wet in there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see any of that
absolutely.
really being, if you delineated that, there wouldn't be a lot of buildable site in it.
No.
No,
Yeah.
really, there's not much there.
Right.
Okay.
Because it's also a
Frankly, if
future
you delineated it
Yeah.
today, Holcomb probably wouldn't have got built. Not today.
town line might not have gotten built.
Yeah.
Well,
The other item, if you don't have any other questions on it,
yeah.
is the comments that we got from Jim Schmuckel that are on your desk. So he's looking at US 31 over on the east side, kind of north of Rennie School. And he's referencing contractors' establishments, which we do have a provision for, and a definition for contractors' establishment. So that's somebody that's got, let's say an excavating company or something like that. They might have an office, maybe a garage, and then they have equipment stored potentially outside or material or something like that. He thought that it would be a use that would be acceptable in the general commercial district. So if you turn on the zoning,
Yeah, here's zoning as current.
so you'll see to the back is all the a lot of that's IG industrial, and then where Elmer's is at is our IL. So our IL industrial is like our heavy industrial, so it's appropriately zoned. And the IG does allow for some contractors' establishments actually are permitted as a use by right in that area. There are some like retail type of situations that are allowed in there as well. Things with like outdoor sales are included in the IG district. And I would be really reluctant to kind of go the route he's thinking, but is to allow them into that CG district. Now, it might fit in this particular area where those contractors' establishment, if you were to drive along the stretch of 31 and on the east side, you're going to see trailers, camper sales, that type of thing, ATVs, all that type of thing. And really, contractor establishments, some of those would probably potentially fit in that area. But I would be concerned about actually providing it as a use in the CG district. Not necessarily in this area, but if you were to go north to, say, the CG area that's along 31, let's say from South Airport Road to the Township City line, that's CG a lot through there. And it's a different type of situation. It's more traditional retail, restaurants, those types of things. Those types of uses usually like to cluster together. So you'll always see the restaurants, the fast food places, the clothing stores, the Lowe's and so forth, Meijer, tend to cluster together. They often will, when people visit those areas, they're often going to more than one location. A contractor's establishment in that area doesn't really work very well. It really kind of is almost detrimental to that area. And we know that, for instance, when we talk to a lot of people looking to do commercial in the township, being on that portion of 31 is where they want to be. Because that's where it's that portion from South Airport to the north. That's where Chick-fil-A wanted to go. They were not going to go up top of the hill here or anywhere else. So they wanted to be right there. And if, a lot of the businesses there's, certain quality of the buildings, there's landscaping is really nice and so forth. So this particular area, it's not so much about allowing the contractor's establishment in the CG. I think it's about whether we would allow contractor's establishment on the east side of 31. So what I would suggest, instead of amending the CG district, is to consider putting a future land use designation along the east side that would be reflective of the IG, or would be industrial, still allowing that commercial general to exist there. But if there are businesses that are more suited in the, and this is just a sample of what that would look like, if they wanted to, they could then rezone to the IG district.
How far north would you go? To the top of Gray Hill?
Yeah, just how it's shown right there.
But only on the one side.
Yeah.
Yeah, only on the one side, because when I look at some of the uses along there, in terms of what I would consider kind of your traditional retail, there is the carpet store, and I think there's maybe a couple other stores. There's a clothing store, like a workwear clothing store that's there. Other than that, they're, for the most part, of outdoor sales type, trailers, supplies, that type of thing. That would be, if you wanted to consider that, that would be my recommendation. Otherwise, I would be very hesitant about amending the CG district to allow contractor establishments.
What's the definition of a contractor establishment?
Let's see.
Mine's down there. I think you're going to beat me to it.
Contractor's establishment is a facility from which a service provider operates a business, including vehicle storage, material storage, office functions, and light manufacturing of products to be sold and used off-site, for example, signage, lighting, etc. So they could fabricate some things on site there as well. It's permitted in the IG as a use by right. The IG is the kind of it's our general mixed-use industrial business. So it has things like contractor's establishment. It also has retail, industrial, primary. It's got, as I mentioned, outdoor sales. Offices are permitted in there. So there are some things that are kind of maybe non-traditional industrial that are permitted there currently.
So I'm really having a hard time. I would need somebody to come in here and make a stronger pitch. I mean, his statement, there does not seem to be a big difference wherein all contractor equipment are located and sold in retail and commercial, and the contractors operating their business in a similar location. I'm sorry, there's a huge difference. In one, you've got a brand spanking new or a refurbished Caterpillar excavator or bulldozer, and you're showing it for sale by, for a contractor, farmer, or whomever. So it's on display. In the contractor establishment, no offense to any contractor, but you've got a used, worn, piece of it. It's a functioning piece of equipment rather than a brand new one for sale. So the appearance from the street is much different. You've got piles of aggregate that might be stacked up. You've got all the functioning aspects of a contractor establishment, which is entirely different from somebody who's selling construction equipment, vehicles, or components, hot tubs, doors, all the other things that get sold. I mean, I have no objection to a contractor opening up an office and selling their services in the CG, but when you start having trailers and construction equipment move, it seems to me to be an entirely different use. I'm not sure if it's not worth discussing, but I think that Mr. Schmuckel's premise is not accurate.
Could his thought, or could it be in a special use permit where, so, you have a good point there about all the debris, or anything that, all the bad stuff that goes with a contractor. But then also the new equipment dealer also has used stuff and has a shop and some nasty stuff also, but probably not as much of it. But if it was a special use permit scenario, could you limit it to,
Use permitted by
or
special
use,
permit.
could it go that way maybe?
Special use permit in the CG?
Possibly. I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
You gotta screen the yard then from the street?
Well, I'm just thinking aloud.
Yeah.
For some situations, some contractor might not have all the junk to go with it, and he might be selling his services, like you said, have a few pieces of equipment, but not all the aggregate or something to go with it. I don't know. I'm just wondering.
I think what's happening is, so when we see this, one thing, we have the CG district, it applies to many other areas besides this location, like I was mentioning up about 31. And that's a totally different way CG looks and feels. This part, if there was a contractor establishment, quite honestly, if it was a fairly decent one, and over on the east side of 31 in this stretch, might not be that noticeable, because you have a lot of it. So it's really pertaining to this location. I quite honestly don't think it's a good idea to put it into the CG, even as a special use permit, because it's usually saying that, if they meet all of our requirements, that they're gonna go in there fit. It's not so much just the appearance, but it's also the activity associated with it tends to be less active. I mean, it's not like a retail place. It's like you're not going in there to necessarily buy something. The commercial businesses that are along the east side of 31 down in this portion are stuff people will go in and buy. They might not be as active as, let's say, up by Meijer or Hobby Lobby or something like that, where people are buying things more on a frequent basis. It's more of like, okay, I'm buying a boat or something like that, so it's less frequent. So their activities are less, and that's where I think even a contractor yard is even less than that. I don't think it's something that it's frequented very often by the public. So to me, commercial means you're usually purchasing something, and it's more of a service. So it creates a lot of dead space in terms of if you're trying to create some type of commercial district or node. So,
And I guess I'm thinking of like an excavation site work contractor. And when I'm thinking of it, that's what I'm thinking of. Are there other contractors that?
I thought he was talking
General
about a
builder
building contractor, somebody
contractors.
building houses, isn't that what he's talking about?
Well, I
well,
mean,
that would all be, we
what-
would consider all of those, the excavating type one, or whether it's a building
So,
contract,
building,
they would all fit into that definition.
I just question, Jim's not here, I'd almost ask him the question is, okay, the premise of a contractor, like a builder, let's use a builder first, because they'd be considered a contractor.
And that'd be a different way than what I'm thinking in my
Yeah,
head.
but
So
I mean,
let's
but a
go
building
on.
contractor would
Well, fits
have,
the definition.
tool trailers and piles of lumber and trusses, and they'd have all those things they'd have to keep on site until they went and build a house, or something, I'm just envisioning that. I'm thinking back to, it's been a long time since I built a house. I didn't drive up and down the road and say, oh, there's a builder, let me stop in and see how they'll do for me. I don't think that's how you look for a contractor. I don't think you drive up and down the highway and think, oh, there's a contractor, they're visible, I'm gonna use them. I can think of some of them, Elmer's and Pop Excavating, those guys weren't visible. They're in a location somewhere else, and people seek them out based on reputation, and their trucks running up and down the road are their exposure. I certainly don't agree with it in all in all the general commercial, but I question whether it's needed at all. It's more of to me, it's an industrial use, and there's a lot of industrial along that corridor and right behind that corridor. But I just question whether it's, somebody would have to really sell me more on the need. What's the real benefit
Doesn't
for it?
Pathway Homes have something up in there where you can,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a contractor's business, Pathway Homes, They will design buildings for you, they will sell you tile, you can pick out your paint and work with a designer and do all that kind of thing. That's a contractor use to me also. They don't, yeah, I don't remember whether I've seen trucks and things there. They don't, as far as I know, Pathway doesn't have pickup trucks with their names on them around. I don't think I've seen those, but
So you described to me is more of a commercial
it's a commercial.
office, a storefront. You're
Yeah, it's more
you're
like
describing a
Storefront.
storefront. A builder having a storefront, to me, that's fine. But a builder having a storefront and then being able to use that spot to store all their equipment
Yeah.
and tools and materials is a totally different use.
Leftover windows, trusses.
Right.
Yeah, I think then you take you look at Pine Grove Homes. Now, that's a little different because they actually build on site. But they've been there for years down there, but I think they probably have an office you could stop in and talk to them about a house and they'll build one. It used to be up where the U-Haul is, there was a place there and they would build the home somewhere and then they'd have them on display there. What Molly described is, to me, is perfectly acceptable. A contractor could have a storefront to
More
sell,
like a showroom.
to sell their services and sell their quality of what they're gonna do. But to me, that's totally different than, because he's leaning in toward the equipment and materials and supplies needed to build those homes. Totally different use to me.
And why, the flip side of that is why would a contractor want to invest in that high-value real estate? That's the part that I'm kind of, any thought, Molly?
Well, Pathway, I think, wanted it because of the visibility.
Well, I
They
mean
would
to
be
say,
in town.
and that I understand, but why would you use that same high-value real estate to store your excavator or your job site trailers
Well, to me, there's not enough room on those little lots
anyways?
anyway to
Yeah.
do a very big excavation company site. You'd have to have a lot of property to do that. It's not gonna be, half acre something. I mean, it just wouldn't work, but, I don't know. So are you saying, because we don't wanna add it into that district, how do we,
Quite honestly,
Do
I think
that.
it's fine the way it is.
just leave it?
I would, yes, I would. I was only suggesting this as if you wanted to accommodate this type of situation, is maybe looking at, I don't know if we want IG along that frontage along there. Like I think you said, it's, the industrial properties don't always need that road visibilities, but if you're selling a camper or boat trailer, you probably will pay for a premium to be located on there. And it seems to identify itself as that's a place where those businesses are clustered. In other words, if you're gonna go look for a boat or camper, you're probably gonna drive down
Drive
here.
out there.
Because they're all there in one location, and that is, they cluster, where these types of uses, quite frankly, they don't need that frontage. They can be off to the back, and they are there. And if they do want to have that frontage, they'll do like what Pathways Home is, create a showroom that, looks more like what their product is that they construct, and people can go in there and
See pictures
and see
that kind
pictures
thing.
of what their home might be or whatever they might want to purchase. And that's a little bit different. That is front-facing as a typical commercial operation.
And those don't need to be on the same site as the entire contractor yard.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm okay with leaving it as it is.
So when it reminds me exactly of Poolside. They're right there, they got all the stuff that Jim talks about, and nobody even mentioned them, but they're right in the area where they're
One of
probably aren't
them,
supposed to
yeah.
be. But, and they don't bother a thing. They got all the equipment, excavators, and all the dump trucks and everything right there. And they're right there in the corner where,
So one of these corners?
Who's that?
yeah, the Poolside guys excavating.
Then they make,
Well, they sell their pools too, but they got
They're
all
right
the equipment
behind,
there.
they're right behind the
They're right where
camper
yeah,
dealerships.
yeah.
Rennie School.
Yeah, and that,
Are they in Blair technically?
no, they're in that drive,
Right,
right where your
that-
arrow
that- You're
is.
pointing at them right there.
Oh.
That's.
I thought, wasn't that the RV places on the corner?
Yeah, they're
No,
one
I'm sorry,
in,
the next one back.
next one over.
Next one back. That's
Yeah,
RV is
right
right there.
there.
That one
Right
right
there.
there. That one right there.
Oh,
is-
sorry, yeah.
So I didn't
twin-
mean to bring it up since
Oh,
they
that's
probably are illegally, but nobody,
Well, they
nobody
could be-
brought it up here, so it didn't bother anybody else.
But they could be non-conforming, but they actually really don't even have frontage on 31. It would be on
Yeah.
Rennie School, which quite honestly, at that point, you're off the main highway.
Right.
Right.
I think the only reason it's there is that there's the street that Memorial South Commons Drive is right there, so
They
it's
do-
just,
they do have
it's just a way of,
Well, they sell pools there too, so
Right.
it all works for them, but.
Yeah,
Well, John's used the term over the years, opening up Pandora's box, and because once
Yeah.
you change the zoning and allow a use,
Right.
you lose a lot of control. So I'm more in favor of just leaving it the way it is for now until somebody can really come in and show me with the need to change it.
I think we articulated a lot of concern relative to what he's asking, and maybe there's some nuance that, in his brief note is lost in translation,
Oh, let's take a path. Where's this Pathways have a storefront now, Molly? Do they have?
Where is it?
Do they have one somewhere?
I think it's
left
still
there a couple
there. Is it
Oh, that's
still
Twin Bay
there?
Glass now, where you're talking.
Oh,
yeah, it's something
It's
else.
been, they've been on there a couple of years. I don't know.
I don't, maybe they don't have one now.
I mean, if somebody
Car
like
wash.
Pathway came in
Oh,
and
they
wanted
have
to-
one
At
by-
a drive in there,
They have a car wash, by a car.
Blue Star, back in there, yeah.
By where?
Blue Star at a drive right there, right off,
Blue Star.
Off 31.
Okay.
But they're not on 31 now.
My point is, let's say that they wanted to build a showroom, a storefront, I'll use the term storefront, where they have pictures of their homes, they have salespeople there, and they have, samples on the wall of the shingles and things like that. They could do that in a commercial district, right? There's nothing stopping them from doing that.
Right.
They could put a big, a sign up that says, we're Pathway Homes, and we could do that. I think the differentiation is using that same use to be able to go the next step and hold your supplies and materials and equipment there. That's the difference for me, Now, you say that the poolside has their trucks there, you're right, but I just think you're going into a different realm there, but.
Takes up a lot of space in what would otherwise be a commercial area. And then kind of the other example we saw when we got this request or were looking up, like in Blair Township, they have the commercial manufacturing district where both of those are combined. And this is an area where we have commercial and industrial kind of next to each other, and maybe like further out, these things kind of work together a little bit. But for us, we have other areas of CG that if we started adjusting that, like the impacts would be a lot starker than further out. So I think, yeah, it sort of makes sense to err on the side of caution on that.
Consensus is, our action
No
is to do
thanks.
nothing. So, all right. Okay, is that everything under unfinished, John? We good?
Do we have to do something with this draft?
Yeah, did you want to?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
This is just a draft letter if you wanted.
You want our
Kind of putting
approval?
that out as a response. I mean, if that's I don't think there's anything that compels you to respond. But I just offered it here as if you did want to respond to the Watershed Center.
I think it's appropriate to respond, and I don't have any problem with that response. But
All right.
You need a motion to that effect?
Sure. That would be helpful.
I'll make a motion that staff be directed to send the letter to the water keeper that's the same as what was in our packet and dated February 28th, 2024.
Support.
Motion made, supported, to go ahead and respond to the Grand Traverse Bay Waterkeeper with this draft memo that's in our packet. Any other further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, John. New business? Any new business?
No new business.
With the master plan itself, so we're gonna update based on all the comments and give them at the next meeting, just here is what has been updated. And then would we give both the board and planning commission the full copy at the joint meeting or in advance of the joint, for their packets for the joint meeting?
So we'll have our, just pull up a calendar here, just so I know the dates. Our first meeting in March, we'll have a revised copy for us, are you gonna give us the revised pages to put in
Revised
ours?
pages, and then we'll provide you with a revised copy for the joint meeting, along with the town board for the meeting. I think that's on the 27th.
Yeah.
And then the joint meeting is still on the 27th,
Seventh, I believe.
right?
Yep,
Okay, is that, and it's 6 o'clock?
6 PM.
6
correct.
o'clock.
That
Just a
one will be at
reminder.
6.
We followed the town board timing on that one. It's our day, but their time, so.
Right, compromise.
Yeah.
Also, since we are just talking about that, we don't have any other added agenda items for that meeting. So I don't know if the planning commission is interested in adding any other discussion points with the board. I know sometimes there's just some general conversation between the town board and the planning commission, but we were gonna probably do an overview of just kind of a brief presentation of the master plan and then just open it up for discussion. So if there are some other things you wanna add into that agenda, let us know. We got some time here too, so if you wanna let us know at the next meeting as well, that works as,
I think last year we can ask everybody to think of things and bring them to the next meeting. We have time to still add them to that agenda for our
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
meeting, right?
Yeah, so
Have you already presented the annual report to the town board?
yes.
Yeah, okay, because that would have been something I
Yep,
would,
they've received and filed.
just, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but if anybody can think of anything, bring it to our,
And you can, if something you're thinking of, let us know at the next meeting, and then we can make sure that we have that on the agenda.
I mean, historically, we've always used it as a good grounding point to make sure that, you know, us and the town board all are not necessarily in the exact same frame of mind, but that we have a good understanding of what their expectations are. They are our governing body, so we want to make sure we're, have their.
We want to bring up a little bit to them. We have talked about high density, trying to find ways to do higher density, maybe in smaller houses or other things, and ask what their thoughts might be on tiny houses or granny flats or other possibilities.
We spent a lot of time, I don't know if it was the last time we got together or the time before that, because we bantered about and talked a lot about, you know, affordable housing, not necessarily low income or low, you know, but just what's affordable, definition of affordable, and how do we, and some of the things we've done have addressed that. You know, we've increased the density, which hopefully will end up making it more affordable for lot sizes and things.
And we did some of that in terms of the short-term rental situation. That is still looming out there for the state to come in.
State, yeah.
I don't know whether townships have figured out a way to draft ordinances or other things that can protect them in some way from that. But that article in the last planning magazine that came out, I think, talked about that a little bit. There may be, and we have the upcoming thing at the resort
Right.
with MTA. Everybody's trying to protect themselves from all of these mandates that are coming down, the mining and the whatever other ones, the
Renewable energy.
solar energy.
Solar
and,
energy,
You
right.
know, all of these things, you know.
I know in the short-term rentals, I was talking with Chuck recently, because he was watching a law webinar and talking about that, these kind of, particularly related to the short-term rentals, and that we should provide for them somewhere within the township. Like, they're not permitted in our single-family residential areas, but maybe in our, you know, recognize that they're permitted in our multifamily or in our general commercial areas or something of that nature.
Put them next to the contractors.
Next to the
Well,
motel.
you know, if the law comes down that you have to designate something
Yes, and I think
for
that's their
them, we can
approach.
be proactive
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get it designated.
Yeah, that's what I think was the discussion in that, was to allow for them to certain areas, and then that helps you to say, yeah, we do provide them, they are in these locations, and we've, you know, appropriately have designated those areas.
You know, and do we have a plan for when the state comes down and says anything that's a 10-acre field can be full of solar panels? Doesn't matter where it is. You know, do we have some kind of an idea?
On that one, on the solar one, that, at least when I've talked to Chuck about it, didn't seem to be too concerned, because those are the larger scale type ones. Those are the ones that are gonna take up significant amount of acreage. And, because they're not even interested in some of the properties that we have within the township that would, you know, they're like 60 acres, that they're not even interested in that. So he didn't seem to be too concerned about that. It will probably hit more of the more rural townships a lot harder than,
Say mining is also another one.
We have some
Mining,
gravel mining.
anything over 10 acres.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
yeah.
We can maybe at least touch on some of these, just so that I think one thing that really helps, I think, both the planning commission and town board having these is just an understanding that we're all on the same page. It makes it a lot easier, particularly when stuff comes from the planning commission and recommendations are made to the town board.
Right.
I think it's just there's no surprises, and everybody's like, okay, this is our agreed upon position on some of these issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Our public did not grow, so we will go right on by public comment. Other business, anybody else have anything for the board? So items for our next agenda, the Garfield, 3066 North Garfield Special Use Permit. We're going to have the public hearing on that. We're going to have the findings of fact on Culver Meadow. And then the only other two things I just made notes of, you're going to get us the final copies for the master plan.
Yep,
We'll
both
I'll get on,
pages.
make sure we're all happy with that final copy. We're going to forward to the town board. And then maybe we can, I put, topics or / agenda for the joint meeting. Maybe it's just talking points. We can kind of finalize some talking points as a board that we want to cover with the board.
Yeah, we
Even if we
can,
put that on other business on that
Okay.
agenda, that'd be good. Yeah.
All right.
Updated master plan pages.
I'd make a motion, we adjourn.
We're adjourned.
Of course, it's nice.